from his studios in New York, it's time for Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. Here's your host, Dan Tortora.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, hanging out with you inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. We're also airing live on facebook.com/livenowdt, facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, and of course on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. Speaking off the air a little bit here as we come back in about some awesome news with the American Athletic Conference. We're here inside of MonPazPopcorn.com's What's Poppin' with Commissioner Mike Aresco of the American Athletic Conference, a mainstay here on Wake Up Call inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. And let's bring him in. There's a lot to discuss. And, of course, there is life for ECU and South Florida right now as they continue inside of the baseball world. So let's bring in the Commissioner. Mike, how you doing today?
Hello, Dan, and great to be with you as usual. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we were talking about it off the air, and obviously the positivity that here in baseball season, East Carolina is still rocking and rolling, and not only are they, but we have seen an emergence and a rise of South Florida. Just what you can say about what these two teams are doing to represent the conference in the baseball world.
Well, very proud of them, Dan. Obviously, South Florida, and that's their branding now. They prefer to be called that rather than USF. UCF prefers the UCF, moniker. But they came out of nowhere. They were not one of our top teams in the regular season, and they won the tournament and just have continued since then. In the meantime, East Carolina always was one of our top teams, and I think as you and I discussed before the session here on the air, East Carolina is over the last 30 years has come close to the College World Series a number of times and just hasn't quite made it. They've been 90 feet away a few years ago, twice in the same game where they would have been to Omaha. So they're obviously a terrific team. Cliff Godwin does a great job. But again, I think that the league has always been good in baseball. This year wasn't one of our best years. Houston wasn't up to par where they usually are. UCF has had some really big seasons and wasn't quite as good this year. Obviously we have a couple of other teams that have done well in the past, and it wasn't as quite as as good a season, but even when we're down a little, it's really a good baseball league. I think we were ranked, and you can correct me, but I think we were ranked around 6th in the country as a league, and I'm just very proud. I think it reflects, Dan, and again, I don't want to get into a long discussion of this part of it, but because we'll go into it in a minute. I know you're going to ask me a few questions about the playoff and other things, but this just reflects the strength of the league. We have Final Four team in basketball. We win the NIT in basketball. We have a team go to the Peach Bowl undefeated and come within a hair of beating Georgia. Really should have won that game, dominated most of the game. We also have, a number of Olympic sports teams that are doing extremely well. And we have two teams from our women's basketball in the NCAA tournament. We're a multi-bid league in college basketball every year. This league's done a lot, and it's right there with the A5, and it just continues to improve each year. So we'll see where it all goes. But baseball, I think, is just a reflection of even when we're not having our best year, we still have a lot of strength.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we've seen these teams grow, we've seen them evolve, and like you said, even on an off year or an uncharacteristic year for one of the schools or a couple of the schools, the team the conference as a whole is relevant, and we've seen relevancy like you talked about in basketball, in Olympic sports, in football, and of course, in baseball, seeing what East Carolina and South Florida have been able to do moving forward here. And, I think for me, it's unique that, here we are a bunch of years in, heading toward a decade in, and we're still talking about what's a P5, an A5, a P6 and whatnot. What does the American have to do to prove itself when you're supposed to win games and win championships, that you've done that, and, obviously make a push to make sure that, money that's coming in and TV contracts and different things that you try to do. I mean, you have worked very diligently to bring this conference into prominence, and these teams have done their jobs. These, ADs and presidents have done their jobs, and coming forward, today, looking at the body of work, it seems almost ridiculous or ignorant to think that the American Athletic Conference is not a premier conference based on championships and everything else that's been done, improvement of facilities and, just what the entire team has done under you, as well as when we look at each of their respective institutions. The American Athletic Conference is no slouch by any stretch of the imagination. So I guess on a Monday morning here in June of 2021, I'm a little confused.
Well, Dan, when you're sort of stuck in this whole G5 business, the group of five, and you get relegated to this, second class status kind of thing, which we've fought hard and we know we're not, but that's really a function of branding, and it really has an effect on perceptions. Although we have fought out of that, as you know, and it's until we get to what I call the promised land, which is A5 status and a better position in the college football playoff. We're still gonna wrestle with that. I don't think there's much doubt about it. But the numbers don't lie. We've you're evaluated and you're viewed by how your best teams do and by the depth that you have in your conference. And when you look at what we've done since 2013, we've had 5 teams in the top 10, or one was in the top 11, which is essentially that top 10. 5 times, Dan, think about that. We've had multiple top 25 teams. We've had teams in the final, CFP rankings, in the top 10. 6 New Year's Bowl appearances in 8 years. One was an automatic in 2013, but we'd have had it anyway if we were in that G5 business. We've got 3 New Year's Bowl wins against top 10 teams, and we would have had a 4th if we'd hung on and won this past year, which we really should have done. And then 52 wins against the A5 in 8 seasons. 5 wins against top 10 non-conference teams. No other G4 even has one. No G4 has finished in the top 10. A 67-26 regular season record against the G5. And the regular season is what matters. And we've had 72 future NFL players on our conference championship game rosters. I mean, think about that. We had 27 one year in 2015. 27 players on that field played in the NFL. Talk about power. 180 length and power. 180 NFL players since 2013. 114 draft picks in the past 8 years. This year, Dan, and this is very telling, 19 draft picks, 2 first-rounders. Big 12 had none. We had 2. 19. The combined G4, those 4 conferences combined had 15, and we had 19 alone. And we've had 13 first-round selections since 2014, and that's more than the combined total of the other 4 conferences, which was 9. So think about those things, Dan. I mean, the numbers don't lie. Now, we're facing essentially an existential challenge, but it also is an existential opportunity in this new CFP plan, whatever it's going to be. We don't know yet. The working group has not reported back yet. And when they do, we'll have some idea of how they want to go. There is a meeting in Chicago, as you know, in June 17th and 18th, where whatever they come forward with, prior to that would be discussed. And we'll be in there fighting hard. I'll be in there. I don't think I'll necessarily have a lot of support in the room because we're kind of caught in the crossfire. You can imagine, the 4 G4 and but the point I've been making to writers recently, Dan, and it's not to disparage the G4 at all, but we have separated ourselves completely. just as the A5 felt that they had separated themselves at one point down the road. And remember, we were relegated from BCS status as the old Big East to this position now at a time when we really didn't have any leverage. And if we had leverage, we would have fought it, but we didn't. And now we do. And we've got to get out of that. We've got to exit that G5. It's really critical. I don't know what the setup's going to be down the road. And we'll figure that out. It's just, again, we know we have achieved a lot. We've earned it. We're going to continue to earn it. We've got some outstanding football teams this fall with Cincinnati and others. We're getting better in basketball. We'll continue to do well in Olympic sports, and we'll just, as I keep telling our membership, you got to keep fighting. Archie Manning had an old saying, you got to keep sawing wood. Eventually you get some results.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, to just keep controlling what you can control, which is to go out and, put together a good product and make sure that, these teams are winning. And you have done that, and you've done that in numerous sports and throughout the years. This is not a fluke. It's not a Cinderella story. So you have your annual meeting. That just concludes here recently. What can you say about the biggest takeaways, the biggest pieces of the American Athletics annual meeting?
Yes, Dan. The annual meeting was very upbeat. We've had a great year, obviously, but it was also very sobering and serious in terms of what we think we need to accomplish. And also, we look back, and we were pleased that we got through COVID safely and that we were able to play. And we were one of the conferences, as you recall, that refused to say we didn't feel we could play safely. We said, no, we can play safely. We were one of the originals. And we had a great medical group that did an unbelievable job. We talked a little about that. And, it's been a tragedy for the country, no question, and with far bigger issues than sports. And I commended our presidents and chancellors for all the work they had to do on their campus. And sports was only a part of that. Well, you could argue a small part. It's also an important part because it's the front porch to the universities, as you know. So that was a discussion. But then we had a major discussion as well about where we go and how we deal with this CFP and what our strategy is going to be. And it's going to be a very, very aggressive strategy. We're going to be out there talking about all these things and working the room. And ultimately, we'll see where we go. But it's clear we talked about, timing and what we need to do. We talked about the investments we've made and we're making. And, again, we also will have, as I said, a serious media plan because, I don't know whether a lot of people are even aware of some of the statistics that I cited to you. Maybe they are. We've tried to point out what we've done and how we compare. And when you have a yawning gap like we do now with the G4, that says you belong in the A5. They call themselves the Autonomy 5. As you know, the media likes to say Power 5, but we prefer these days to say A5. And, the whole power thing suggests that anyone not in that group is not a power conference. When we stand on the podiums at the Final Four or, at a big bowl game that we've won against a top 10 team, to say you're not a power team or a power conference is kind of silly. So we had a long discussion about what we're going to do and how we're going to deal. And we're still, we're still shadow boxing, Dan, because we don't know what the CFP, proposal will be and how it will be vetted. Eventually we'll know. But as I said, that's the existential challenge. That's right before us, and it's going to determine our future for a long, long time, possibly. Because if this thing gets extended and revamped and expanded, which is potentially likely, then we're going to have to have a better place in it, or 8 years of our work is kind of washed down the drain, and we're just not going to let that happen. It's been too hard a road, too great a struggle, too much success, and we can't let that happen. So the second thing is the A5. We want to be part of the autonomy group. It's a parallel challenge, and we're making our points. We're talking to anybody, commissioners, presidents. We're making those points quietly, but we will, we'll follow up on that. But it is less urgent right now in the sense that, the CFP is upon us. There's something may well happen in the next several months. We don't know for sure. There are probably those in the group who think we're moving too fast, but and I know that there are some meetings coming up. And so that's the more immediate challenge, but it doesn't mean that we don't want to be at that autonomy table. We should be at that table. I think the outstanding work of our medical group was a reflection of why they could have made a real contribution to those talks that were taking place among the A5. And maybe they could have, maybe they would have made a difference with the Pac-12 or the Big Ten. I don't know. But I'll tell you this, we were tracking the myocarditis issue long before others seemed to have been. And when, there was this, you remember that almost panic about myocarditis and the Big Ten ultimately decided not to play. I don't know if that was a huge issue or not. For them, it seemed to be. We were tracking on that. And we knew that it was not likely to be the kind of issue that should prevent you from playing, that you could do the workups, you could, check on your student athletes, you could make sure there were no issues. And yet you could monitor it. And so we in the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12 decided to move ahead. But our medical group was just outstanding. It's just one example of where we can make a contribution in that room and should make a contribution. We've got major schools and major markets. I didn't even get into the non-competitive stuff, Dan. We're in 3 of the top 10 markets in the country. We also are in the DC market through Navy, which is unofficial, but that's really their market as well. In addition, we have we're in 19% of the country's homes. We have tremendous geographical reach. We have we've got a tremendous TV deal that affords us great exposure. We've had hundreds of games with over 1 million viewers. All these things really matter, and that's why I think in the end we should be in that A5 room. We've got big schools. UCS, one of the biggest in the country in terms of enrollment. We've got important schools. We've got schools that have achieved a lot. And the last shouldn't about A5 should not be static. It should not be set in stone. There's got to be a path in. There has to be upward mobility. That's the American way. The idea that you can achieve and you can move up. This notion that you're stuck, that's unreasonable to be stuck in a position after you continue to achieve. That's the whole point. And as it turned out, because we had some upheaval back in 2012, 11, 12, we were relegated from BCS status, which would have put us in this A5, A6 group. We were relegated, and now we've clawed our way back. And we need to continue that fight and make sure that we get there. There have been a lot of skeptics, of course, but I've always felt deep down that we would get there as long as we continue to achieve at a high level, and that's what we've continued to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is kind of scraping away at it. And like you said, upward mobility. The American way, the American dream. That's America has never cut itself off. It's never said we will go this far and stop. It's always been the goal to continue. This country was built on piece by piece putting things together. And so, I definitely can appreciate the point of, if the A5, AKA the autonomous 5, if they exist, then why can't there be an autonomous 6? Why can't there be an expansion of that? Where are you at with that? Because I do want to get into the college football playoff stuff, of course, but where are you at with autonomy, the moves that you made as a conference for maybe, some things that people don't know? Do you look like you're becoming an autonomy group? Are you mirroring the autonomy group? And because it's a legislative thing, where can you be in this when it has to be written into law? So kind of bring me into what's going on with the conference. What are the schools looking like in comparison to the autonomy group? And, legislatively, where can you go with this?
Well, that's a good point because it is a legislative issue to be in the autonomy group. And incidentally, we are in 19 million television households, and it's 16% of the nation's television homes. I think I said 19% of the homes. It's 16% of the homes, but 19 million television households. And by the way, the combined population in our states is 110 plus million. And if you add some states where there's significant interest, like New Jersey for Temple, Arkansas with Memphis, Kentucky for Cincinnati, the number grows to 126 million, people in those states. So you can see the broad reach we have. Yes, you made a good point. It's a legislative issue. We would have to go to the MCA Council, which we would plan to do. We would have to then, get approval of the board of directors at the Division I level, and we think we can do that ultimately. But that's the process there. The second, though, the parallel process is the CFP, and that's separate, Dan. That's not a legislative thing. It's completely separate from NCAA governance.
Right.
It's been set up by the CFP, by the FBS, 10 conferences plus Notre Dame, and so consequently, you fight through that on a different level and in a different way. But that's, as I said earlier, that's the more urgent challenge because that's how we're going to be known and that's how we're going to be branded and that's how we're going to be seen, by the public, by the media, and that's really our future. To put us in a better competitive position, to generate more revenue. We're not generating anywhere near the revenue we deserve, especially with the huge gap between the G4 and us. And then finally, I don't know what's going to happen with the playoff, whether it's going to be, whether the recommendation will be to stay at 4, whether it'll be go to 6, 8, 10, 12, 16, who knows at this point. And I'm not even going to make a prediction because nobody knows. Luis Tiant once, there were some unusual things that had happened in baseball. We all know Luis Tiant, the great Red Sox pitcher. And they said, boy, that was pretty unexpected. And he said, well, in baseball, you don't know nothing. And that's the truth in this too. We don't know anything. We don't know what's going to happen. But we will be ready, depending on what recommendations come out of the working group, to figure out what our position, should be. The composition of let's say there is an expanded playoff. The composition of it is very important, and obviously I don't know whether there'll be automatic qualifiers or whether they'll be all at larges or a mixture. Who knows? Nobody knows at this point. But whatever it is, we want to make sure that we're on the same footing as the A5 because that's what we deserve. And we've got to, as I said, exit one way or another, this group of 5 designation because it has been, very damaging to us in the sense that we have achieved, beyond those parameters and really have, had to deal with that branding and that. That means you don't get the coverage you deserve sometimes. You don't get the respect you deserve, especially with the committee. I don't think we've gotten the respect from the selection committee that we deserve, Dan. You saw what happened with Cincinnati this past year. You saw how good they were. You saw them in the bowl game. Incidentally, they played that bowl game without 5 of their best players. The 2 great, All-American defensive backs, Ahmad Gardner and James Wiggins, who were both Ahmad Gardner will be probably a top draft pick, and James Wiggins was one. And he didn't play, and neither did the center. He didn't even make the trip. Their top running back did not play. You saw what the backup did. He had scored that touchdown, outran the whole Georgia team. We also, unfortunately, in the first half, and it was our fault, we lost our left tackle to a targeting penalty, and that we still ended up playing that game dead. He took a 53-yard field goal as time ran out to beat us, but also we came close to wrapping it up there toward the end and just didn't quite do it. But the point is, Cincinnati was a really good team, and you saw 2 lost teams move ahead of them. You saw a team that, lost to a depleted, LSU team that didn't drop. Cincinnati would drop because they had a COVID issue. A&M had a COVID issue. They didn't drop. So I do think that there is, an issue of branding that affects how teams are viewed. And Cincinnati was a very, very good team. And we'll just have to keep fighting that battle. I mean, I think the facts are clear. I think we have to make our case. No one's going to make it for us. And we'll see where we go.
And that's the thing. Speaking here with the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mike Aresco, on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside the Cafe Kubal studios. Those college football playoff spring meetings that we kind of were talking about just a little bit here, a little preview into it. the fact that we could see as many as a 16-team playoff. Right now there are 4. We could see that there's 5 possibilities: 6, 8, 10, 12, or 16. I know that you said that you're not going to prognosticate what it would be, but what do you think? I mean, if you were sitting within the group and you could expand to 6, 8, 10, 12, or 16, what are you comfortable with, Mike? What do you think would be a good approach to college football, having been around the collegiate athletic world for so long?
Dan, I got to be careful here. I do think expansion would be good for the game. And we could certainly live with 8 or 12 if that's what, the working group says. We don't know what it's going to say. We just don't know. But we think expansion is probably the best chance that we have of having an opportunity to play in it and to be relevant, nationally when it comes to this kind of thing. So we'll see. But again, I don't know what they're going to do at this point. We just don't know. And regardless, though, the issue becomes whatever they do, we want to be, again, viewed as essentially an A6. And I think that's something that, again, we've earned. I think it's interesting. And again, I don't cite these statistics to disparage other conferences, but we were ranked ahead of the highest, Pac-12 team on occasion. We've had more teams in the final polls than some of those, A5 conferences. 3 of them at one, over the years. We were obviously ranked ahead of the highest ranked Pac-12 team this year. We've had as many teams as some of those in the final CFP rankings. I can go on and on. And we have a winning record against one of the A5 conferences. And we have, if you take our top teams, we have outstanding records against the A5 conferences. And, I mentioned the NFL draft picks. We had actually more selections, in 2017 than in the Big 12. This year we had two first-round selections, and one of those A5 conferences didn't have any. I could go on and on. But this conference has achieved. Now, to some extent, change is sometimes hard to process for people. And we, if you look back, the pedigree of our school, we've got some schools that have played some great football over the years, but we also have some newcomers that are powerful, like UCF and Memphis. Memphis has had some sporadic success over the years, but you look at our league and you see a team like UCF with all the potential in the world, and it's realized some of it. And then you look at a USF and you look at others. You look at the history of East Carolina football, and they've been down a little bit, but they won't stay down. Then you look at Cincinnati. You look at Houston and what they've done. The depth in this league, it's not just a one-horse league. This has been Tulsa is a very good team. They do it without necessarily the large student body, the resources that other teams have, but they get it done, and they've been they really had a tremendous team this year. Zaven Collins didn't play in their bowl game. That was a factor for that. But other than that, they had a great season and took Cincinnati right to the limit in our championship game. So if you look at the depth and the quality of the league, it's there. But, you don't necessarily have, teams that immediately get the attention, like a Michigan and Ohio State and Alabama, and it's sometimes assumed that, well, Cincinnati isn't going to be able, or our top teams won't play with them. Well, that's been proven wrong. Georgia was really, once they got JT Daniels at quarterback, they were as good as any team in the SEC. And you saw what happened in the bowl game. You saw what happened against Auburn, which had beaten both Georgia and Alabama, the 2 teams that played in the championship game, and what UCF did in that game. You saw what Houston did with a number 8 Florida State in 2015. You saw what Houston did against Oklahoma and Louisville in 2016. Those were both top 3 teams when they played them. And Houston won both of those games decisively. UCF against Baylor was supposed to lose by 20 points. I think they were the biggest underdog in the history of the BCS, and they scored 52 points and pounded Baylor, which was running away with the Big 12 and scoring 30, 40 points a game and winning all their games big. So we've always performed in Memphis. Even when we lose, Memphis gave Penn State all they wanted a few years ago. Tremendous game, and also played without their right tackle and the great tight end, who at the last minute couldn't play. And then we had another performance, UCF against LSU. It was an 8-point game, and it was a 3-point game at the half. UCF had the early lead, and again, they didn't have Mackenzie Milton. Mackenzie Milton were on that field, and there were some opt-outs, with LSU, but they were still a powerful team. And so we've held our own, and I always say our top teams are as good as anyone's. And you have to look ahead. You have to. The way I'll close this part of the discussion, Dan, is Mike Slive, the late Mike Slive, the late great Mike Slive, was a good friend, and I've done some serious radio and I've done a lot of Paul Feinbaum lately, but at the time it was a serious segment, and I was talking about how this isn't your grandfather's Temple. It isn't your look what they did under Matt Rule. Not your grandfather's Memphis. Not your grandfather's other teams. And Mike called me and said, by the way, I happen to be driving, and I heard you on Sirius Radio saying that. And he said, you should keep saying it because it's true. He said, those teams are not what they once were. And that is really important. And he said, I had those teams in Conference USA. Remember, Mike was Conference USA commissioner for a number of years before he became SEC commissioner. And he said, they are not the same now. They have a renewed commitment. They have, have really done a lot to improve their situation. And that's why this notion of upward mobility is really important. You have to have the ability to move forward. You can't have a situation where you're arbitrarily excluded and you show that you've done what you need to do, you've achieved. It's just profoundly wrong to have that much achievement and to get nowhere with it. And as I said earlier, upward mobility and opportunity are hallmarks of the American experience. They're what we've always, as a country, been about. And times change, circumstances change. They changed dramatically against us 8 or 9 years ago with all the conference realignment, but they've now gone the other way, and they've changed dramatically for us. So this autonomy group status has to be dynamic. It can't be set in stone, and you can't freeze the membership. And that's the point we're going to make pretty loudly, and we'll see where we go with it.
Yeah, we look at the working group that will be, sitting with this and the opportunity that this could happen, and that's working group being Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlesby, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, Notre Dame AD Jack Swarbrick, and Mountain West Commissioner Craig Thompson. Thoughts on, that group working together, because I know you have relationships around the collegiate athletic world. So, thoughts on kind of the task that group has and what these gentlemen will really have to be dealing with, as this is no minor issue by any stretch of the imagination. There's name, image, and likeness and all these other things going on, but the slightest the most minuscule conversation about the college football playoff gets a lot of reaction from people because people are constantly looking at expansion. So what can you say about this working group and the task that they have to try to figure out what's going to work, as we're within a contract that's supposed to depart in 2025, but there's the notion that maybe things could be altered here before then. Just what you could say about this group and what's on their shoulders right now.
Well, first of all, whatever they do will not be the last word. This is just a working group. It's going to make some recommendations, and then the entire group will have a chance to vet it. And by the way, the entire group has been involved in this over the years. We've talked a lot about this quietly in meetings over the years, and Bill Hancock and CFP set up this working group. But whatever they do will be subject to serious vetting. And we don't, as I said, we don't know what they're going to do. Now, granted, when you come up with a proposal, it gets a lot of publicity and it gets a lot of attention, and it takes on kind of a life of its own. But they'll be, first of all, whatever happens, this is a complicated issue. There are those who think maybe we're moving too fast. Others, feel we should go ahead, full speed ahead. But remember, you've got those contract bowl games sitting there, and you got to figure that out. You'd have to figure out schedules and all sorts of other things. In addition, you you really have a situation where the conferences have to decide whether they're comfortable with how this thing is playing out. So there's a lot going on, and I haven't even mentioned TV. You don't go to TV until you have a plan, obviously. So nobody's done anything in that regard. But TV will have, our friends at ESPN will have a large say in this, especially if anything is done within the term of the current contract. And then, but as I said earlier, it's really a very serious matter for us, as it is for other conferences, because who knows? This was a 12-year deal. So we've been, we've been stuck in this G5 thing now for 7 years. This will be the 8th year. And that's really had an impact on us. So we obviously know what, a long-term deal can do if you're not in the right position. And so we're going to take it, as seriously and as, and we're going to deal with it as aggressively as we possibly can, knowing that our future is at stake. And if you don't continue to ascend, if you don't continue to improve, you can always go the wrong direction. You can start regressing. So last thing we want to do is have that happen. And, you've seen some of the A5 conferences have struggled, and we know that, we're not immune to anything that might happen. But we also know that we've got an aspirational group that is making enormous progress on all levels and we have a new TV deal, as you know, and it gives us the resources now to do what we need to do. We don't have to have as much money as the A5 to compete with them. We've proven that. We proved it when we were getting almost nothing from our other TV deal. I mean, that we built this conference, Dan, when we were getting just a tiny bit of money from TV, but we had the exposure, and we were able to get in front of the country and play these great games and have, Temple almost beat Notre Dame in prime time on ABC and win these big bowl games in front of huge audiences. The Georgia, we didn't win this one, but the Georgia-Cincinnati game, and everybody saw how competitive Cincinnati was. That game had almost 9 million viewers. It was the highest rated game outside the 2 playoff games. And that tells you something. And we had, great audiences for UCF Auburn and other games where we have performed and we won. Yeah. And so we had the ability to make our mark, and without that we wouldn't have. But now we've got the resources, and as I've pointed out, you don't have to have the same TV deal that the A5 have to be part of that group, because if that were the case, there'd be an A2, because the SEC and the Big Ten are so far ahead of everybody else. You wouldn't even have an A5; it'd be an A2. And that's not the way it is. And it doesn't have to be either. And in our case, we've got, the number. It's a big number. I don't mention it publicly, but everybody knows what it is. And that deal has helped us. We also have a separate deal with CBS Sports Network for Navy, which is in our conference. We also have, an Army-Navy deal. We also have, a separate basketball deal, which other G4 conferences I don't think have. And that's with CBS, the main network. So we've got what we need now, and that's why I think we will continue to achieve. We've got that hunger, that aspiration. Our recruiting has improved each year. Everybody's going to be wrestling, Dan, with the transfer portal and the abolition of the year in residency. That's going to have potentially an impact. Nobody's yet sure what that impact's going to be, but it's probably going to affect A5 conferences as well as ours. Yeah. NIL will have an impact. We're not sure. That's the Wild West at this point. We're not sure what's going to happen with recruiting and retention of players with NIL. Hard to say how it's going to affect camaraderie in the locker room. Nobody knows. But those are the kinds of things that we're going to be keeping our eye on. But in the end, it's up to us to continue to achieve, and I think we will.
Speaking here with the Commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mike Aresco. Mike, before I let you go, if there was to be an expansion, here are some of the potential ways that it would look, and I'd love to get your thoughts on the, hypothetically speaking, top 5 teams as selected by the committee, plus a guaranteed group of 5 spots, which they're currently including the American in right now. Or there's a top 6 teams as selected by the committee with no guaranteed spot for the group of 5, or there's Power 5 champions plus an at-large team, or Power 5 champions plus the highest-ranked group of 5 champion. Thoughts on those models that would be modeled around if there were to be like 6, so to speak. What do you think of those models that would include a highest ranked group of 5 champion, where you would have to, be the team that won your conference, or if there was a guaranteed group of 5 spot where no matter what, there was going to be somebody there, or if it's just the top 6 or an at-large? What are your thoughts on those kind of different ways to look at the expansion?
Well, Dan, it's probably better that I don't get into the actual specifics. Let's see what the working group comes up with. But I can tell you this, the notion that the G5 spot, we think that should be our spot. And if the G4 can get a spot too, more power to them. But we think that we should get a spot, period. If all we end up with is the same situation we've had with the G5, even if there is some level of access. I mean, there's access now, right? It's just a question of we haven't been able to convince the committee that we're in the top 4, even though I thought we had some teams that were worthy of it. We just don't want to be held back by this branding, this G5 business. And it's just not, it hasn't worked fairly for us because we're not really part of that group. I don't think we ever were, but we were unfortunately relegated to it, and we had to deal with it, and we've had to deal with it for a long time now. So I don't like it. I don't like the designation. I've said it many times, and I'll say it, and I'll say it in the room too. I don't have any problem with saying it in the room because the gap between us and the G4 is enormous. Now, again, it does make you a popular guy in the room with the G4. But again, we were the ones relegated last time. It happened to us, and we couldn't, fight back effectively, 8 or 9 years ago. And now, the shoe's on the other foot in terms of what we've accomplished and what we've done. And we just have to figure out a way to be with the other group, if in fact there are groups. If everything levels out and there are no longer any groups and everybody's on some kind of equal footing, that's fine too. The question then would be, okay, what's the composition of the selection committee so that we don't, you don't have a situation where, you don't get a fair shake from the committee. And I never criticize that committee personally. I think they've got great people and they try to do a good job. But I do think that inherent in this is this whole issue of branding. And I saw it last year. I saw it the year before. I saw the way we're ranked. You find 2, 3, 4 loss, P5 teams ranked ahead of our teams. And it doesn't seem to happen when it's a G5 team. A team that plays, I won't single out teams, but teams that plays a weaker schedule than we do, but might only have 1 loss or no losses, ends up ranked ahead of some of our teams that clearly, it might have happened a few years ago with a 2-loss Cincinnati team that destroyed BC in the bowl game. It clearly was better than any other G5 team, even though they lost to Memphis in our championship game. But they weren't necessarily going to be ranked ahead of those teams. And to me, that doesn't happen when it's a P5 team. I just want to see consistency and fairness and an acknowledgement that we're a strong league and that we play really, good football, and ultimately we can hold our own. So that would, who knows what's going to happen. I don't know what kind of proposal is going to come forward. We really have to wait and see. But, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting few months, Dan. No question.
And you'll have the chance, to be around this eventually in the not too distant future. You'll have the opportunity to be around this. So just what you can say about that. I mean, the presentation of some potential ideas is going to be coming up here within the next, little bit, next few weeks and whatnot. The summer could be very busy as the commissioners get set to converge in a couple different ways. What can you say to that, knowing that, this is a, very potentially big summer for the American Athletic Conference as well as for the future of college football?
It is, and I think we have to wait and see at this point. We'll keep our powder dry, as they say. We'll wait and see. It's going to be, as you said, an interesting period. But I think you have to, as I said, we've been shadow boxing a bit. You really have to see what is put forward, and then there'll be, fortunately, time to debate it and a time to have the conferences weigh in, the coaches weigh in. And obviously the media and the public will weigh in. And it's important because in terms of the sports scene, because college football has really become the second most popular sport to the NFL, period. I mean, you look at the college football playoff ratings, and they're higher than the NBA playoffs, or higher than the baseball World Series. Who would have ever thought that 20 or 30 years ago? But they're really strong ratings. People do care. People around the country care, and which is good. It's good that they care. I mean, they should. If you don't have that kind of passion, then the sport doesn't have that kind of following, and it does. And so consequently, this will be closely watched. There'll be a lot of controversy, I'm sure. And other conferences will have their own views about the world and how it should look. And that's why, you get in a room and you try to hammer it out. And if you don't, then, who knows what's going to happen down the road. But it's going to be an interesting, summer and fall. And I don't know, again, we don't know what's going to happen. And it's always possible that there'll be strong sentiment to keep it at 4. I tend not to think so, but what do I know? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, the FBS commissioners, obviously you being a part of that, will meet June 17th and 18th at the tail end of the annual Collegiate Commissioners Association meeting. And then following that, there will be a commissioners meeting with the College Football Playoff Board of Managers in Dallas, Texas, not too far from Irving, where the American Athletic now calls home for its base to operate for operations. So, Mike, really quick before I let you go here, to kind of go with the conversation of the A5 and the G4, that puts you in the middle with this American Athletic Conference right now, trying to get into the autonomous and separate from the group of. Do you feel in that way that you're a man on an island? And if you do, how do you function within that? You respect the A5, you respect the G4, you have obviously respect for your product of the American, but do you feel like a man on an island right now in a transitionary period? How do you see it?
Well, you can feel that way, and I've felt that way over the years now because we are caught in the middle, and we're struggling to get to another level, and that has an impact on the other 4. And by the way, the other 4 can be doing exactly what we're doing. It's just that we've had the achievements. We're 4 years in a row now. We've been on New Year's Day, and we've had these top 10 teams. We've done what we needed to do. But yeah, I do sometimes feel alone in this, but that's fine. We just have to fight for our position. I get along personally with everyone, and we're all friends. But in the room, you have to fight for. Jim Delaney and I were friends, even though, and Mike's live, and Mike said, we didn't always see eye to eye. I didn't like what happened to us 8 or 9 years ago, but I had to accept it. And ultimately now there might be a situation that arises similar to that. But we're all friends, but we all understand. I think the other 4 understand where I'm coming from. And I think if they were in my position, they might well be doing what I'm doing. I don't know if, I think there's no question that, you have to, do what's right for your organization, and that's what's essentially happened. But it's lonely at times, certainly in the room, and you just have to work it through. That's really all you can say about it. It can be tough when you're caught in a crossfire and you're in the middle. But on the other hand, you can persuade, and you can take a position and fight for that position, and ultimately we'll see where it goes.
And during your annual meeting, separate from kind of what we just spoke about, but staying with the American and staying with upward mobility, just what you could say about the appointments to conference committees, and maybe what you would like to say about different people that within this annual meeting, effective June 4th, were put into their appointments inside of the conference.
Well, we've got a great group. David Rudd did a terrific job as our chair, and he's now transitioned off. We have 2-year terms, and Neville Pinto of Cincinnati, who's also terrific, will take over as chair, and vice chair will be Mike Fitz of Tulane, and Mike has been really strong advocate, in our conference, and he'll be the vice chair. In addition, Renu Couture is our NCAA board rep, and she does, a great job, and she's been very, very aggressive on our behalf in that forum. David Rudd had been on the presidential forum, so we're well represented within the NCAA as well. Michael Kelly is chair of our AD group, and he's terrific, as is Chris Pesman, who is the AD at Houston. He's our vice chair. And we've added some presidents to our audit committee. We've added some presidents to our executive committee. So it's a great group we have. And Gerald Turner, I don't want to leave out Gerald because he is our rep on the management group of the CFP. So as you know, each FBS conference has a presidential rep, and Gerald is ours, and they're the ones ultimately that will make these decisions. And Gerald is knowledgeable and as well respected as anyone out there. He was years ago was president of Ole Miss and very active in the Knight Commission, and he's been president of SMU for a long time. And look at what they're doing now; done a phenomenal job there. So we've got great group, and we have, as I said too, it doesn't get the attention because again, so much of this is about football.
Yeah. But
basketball is very good in this conference, extremely good, and we've hired a new basketball person, Brian Thornton, who's absolutely great. He does most men's and women's basketball. He's done a great job, and we're going to bulk up there and do some hiring as well. But also we want to focus and make sure we're really good in everything: football, basketball, women's basketball, Olympic sports. And that's, as you know, Dan, you want to be well-rounded, and that's what I think we are. And we've got a tremendous group of SWAs, senior women administrators who have really helped us get organized and be really a powerful conference in all sports. So again, great ADs group. I can't mention everybody. Troy Dannon is our football oversight representative, and that's a really important job. And then we've got Chet Gladchuck at Navy, who, as you know, has been around a long time and really, really knowledgeable person. But I can't mention everybody, but it's I'm very, very happy with the group we have and happy to represent them. It's an honor. It's a privilege. It's also a real responsibility to represent this group and try to get them to where they want to be.
And final point here with the Commissioner of the American Athletic Conference, Mike Aresco, on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside the Cafe Kubal studios. Got to ask, I know we've talked about it before, you have 12 teams that are currently with 12 schools that are in the American Athletic, Wichita State in every sport except for football, Navy there for football only. Is the ear still to the ground at the thought of potentially, as we talk about upward mobility and the American dream, is there thoughts that the American could dream bigger, and is there still the open conversation of looking to ever expand the conference?
We've talked about it from time to time. It's really on the back burner. That's. I probably should leave it at that. We don't really have any plans to expand. We're really happy with 11. We've got 11 strong football schools, 11 strong basketball schools. As you know, we have Wichita State. We have Navy and football only.
Yeah.
We don't really feel we need to expand. If the opportunity arises where a team can really add to our brand and it makes sense on other levels, then we would at least consider it. But right now, it's completely on the back burner. We're really focused on getting where we need to go on the CFP and the A5.
That coming from Mike Aresco. Mike, as always, I appreciate it. Appreciate you being open to discussion on all different topics and really breaking things down. And as always, what you bring to the table here at Wake Up Call is being real, being honest, and really talking about the things that matter to the conference, that matter to you as its commissioner, and the goals that you have moving forward, and not shying away from the conversations and really never beating around the bush and directly looking at the topics that you would like to see addressed and discussed. And I very much appreciate the fact that you make time for my show, as well as the fact that you speak about the things that are very pertinent to the time. So, as always, I do thank you for that, and it never goes unnoticed.
Well, thanks, Dan. Really appreciate it. You're always knowledgeable. You're always, you always ask great questions. You obviously follow these matters, and you've also over the years been fair to the conference. I don't expect people to just agree with everything we say or do. People have their own opinions, but you've always been, I think you've looked at things objectively and looked at our conference in a fair manner. And I appreciate being on with you because it's always a good, good discussion. A really, I would say it's a varied and really, a discussion that hits the main points. So I really appreciate, having a chance to talk to you from time to time, and hope you and your family and all your listeners stay well. Hope everybody can get vaccinated and we can get beyond this pandemic. It's still not quite over, but we're obviously optimistic, looking forward to, the summer and fall. And again, thanks for having me, Dan. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Make sure you enjoy the nice weather, and hopefully we'll be able to do something with the American down in Texas soon with a hopeful future looking brighter than the days that we've had here in these last few months. So stay safe as always, and I'll look forward to talking with you soon.
Thanks, Dan. You take care. Bye now.
Take care.